a way to, when it's a real need, it's you just figure it out. You just, if your refrigerator breaks, typically a refrigerator is a fairly high needed item. I doubt you're going to go to the ice chest method. And so, yeah, you might not have, whatever, $1,000 just waiting to find a home at one of the department stores or whatever. But you're going to figure out a way. If it's on plastic, if it's borrowing, whatever, you gotta do that. Why? Because it's a need. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse number 7. The first part of the chapter, God was instructing the ladies, but because we're looking at the top two needs of ladies, we're addressing the men right now. It says, likewise, ye husbands, and when God says likewise, what he said to the ladies has application to the men. So, in the case of verse number 1, it talks about being in subjection to your own husband. Remember, Ephesians chapter 5 tells us to be in subjection to one another. Why? Because you're the need meter for the other. But anyway, he goes on and he says, dwell with them according to knowledge. That's when you first got married, you might have thought you knew your husband. You might have thought you knew your husband. Did you know everything? Doubt it. You might have thought you did, but I would assume that you've learned a few other things along the way. So the word knowledge means ongoing. It's increasing knowledge. And so it's something that typically while you're dating, you're accumulating knowledge to be able to do things that please them, that you like. Unfortunately, oftentimes, after a few years of marriage, we really let up on seeking avenues to please or to help. But God tells us that that's the requirement, what he wants. Then he says, giving honor unto the wife. So for the husband, the preference goes to the wife. And so we find that the wife's top need, and again, it might not be but it'll be in the top 10, but we're looking at what across the board is counted the top 5 for men and women. The ladies with a caring husband, meaning expresses it verbally and then also shows it in action, in caring and doing. Then we began looking at conversation. In Romans chapter 12, verses 15 and 16, the Bible says, rejoice with them that do rejoice. Okay, those that you rejoice with, how do you know to do that? Because they share it with you. They share something that's great that happened or something they enjoyed. They share it, and when they share it with you, you're able to rejoice with them. If they don't say anything, boy, I didn't know that you really liked that. I didn't know that you really enjoyed that. You never said anything. And how many times have we, in our marriages, gone sometimes for years, and then all of a sudden we comment how much we like doing something, and the other looked at us and said, I didn't know you liked doing that. I didn't know you like that type of food. I've never fixed it because I never heard you say you like it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you say, boy, that was a really good spaghetti. Because we don't converse. all the people we ought to be able to share our feelings, likes, dislikes, etc. with, oftentimes are the ones that we withhold it from. For whatever reason, God says, so giving honor. In conversation, we find rejoice with them that rejoice and weep with them that weep. Same scenario. If something is troubling you, if the question's asked, there's something wrong, right? And we respond, oh no, everything's fine. And we do that. Again, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense when you speak it out like that. Well, no, everything's fine, but we've lived with our husbands and wives long enough to know, yeah, there's something wrong, but if you're not going to tell me, I can't try to remedy it. I can't try to fix it. I can't have empathy with you. You close the door. And so ladies got to be careful that you don't close the door when the question's asked, and men the same. But it takes conversation. Before you dated, for the most part, your lives were two different spheres in a sense. You had the things that you do, she had. But then as you got to know each other, there was some combination. There was some interest in common. And so you could talk about the interests in common. If we dwell according to knowledge, that common interest ultimately ought to become complete interest on both sides. And so conversation then is easier to have. Why? Because you have the same interests. That means sometimes some of our interests we have to let go. And our flesh is, why do I have to let go of anything? Because remember, our flesh is 100% selfish. 100%. And so our natural self, I just won't do it as much. I won't go fishing as much. I won't go skiing as much. I won't go flying as much, or whatever it might be. But I'm not giving it up. Well, then you've already put a wedge. Conversation is not debating or seeking to sway the other to your viewpoint. That's not conversation. Yes, there'll be times when we debate or have discussions, if you will, about things that we disagree, and maybe we won't be swayed one way or the other, but that's not the conversation that is desired of ladies. It's just simply talking about what took place today, what you're looking forward to tomorrow, or what happened yesterday. Just talking about life. It's sharing and listening. Conversation doesn't happen if you don't have a listener. And I would venture all of us have found ourselves, we thought we were conversing, and we threw a question in, and the other turns around and says, what? And he said, are you listening? Was I talking to myself or what? Conversation takes one that is listening as well as talking. The Lord's an empathetic listener. He tells us this in Hebrews chapter 4. He knows the feeling of our infirmities. Why? Because he's looking and hearing our heart all the time. He knows our needs, and he's willing to help us with those needs. So if we truly are a listener, we're listening with our eyes. You know, what do we teach our children when they get something, you tell them to say thank you, and as they're running out the door, thanks. You say, whoa, wait a second, come back here and look them in the eye and tell them thank you. There's just something about eye contact in conversation that says a whole lot more than just the noise that our voice is making. And it's especially true in a marriage relationship. True listening has eye contact. It shows what you're saying is important to me. Because our eyes convey sadness, happiness. It conveys how, if it really is important to us or not. There's a whole lot that we read into the eye contact. Listening also entails your mouth being closed. The interrupting all the time, each point of that she might be saying or he might be saying, that destroys conversation. Pretty soon you say, what's the point? Listening also includes our body language. There are those that's every time a lot of presidential speeches, inaugural addresses, and whatnot. Afterwards, they have a person that studies body language, and they give a big critique on some of the things that he said, but you could tell he didn't mean it at all just by his body language. We probably aren't anywhere close to body language experts, but it doesn't take that. You know by the body language of the one you're talking to, they're disinterested. They're enduring hearing you for that moment, and soon as there's a pause in the conversation, well, I gotta go, I gotta do this, I gotta get this done, and we're just looking for an exit. And the whole while that they're talking, our body language is saying that. And it doesn't take much of a genius to figure out, wow, that kind of puts a cold rag on any conversation. Really cools the thought of sharing what happened to me today that really was upsetting, or what was really exciting. What's the point in saying anything? Our body language. Listening includes listening to their facts as well as feeling. It's something that we have as guys. Feelings are something that aren't as fluid to us as far as sharing. And so because it's not that way with us, sometimes we don't pay attention, but we're not listening according to knowledge. We're not understanding, you know what, they're different than I am. We state it all the time because the world's got it so goofed up. We know statistically there's a huge difference, but we've bought in to some degree, and therefore we fail to listen to the feeling of the conversation. And true listening will prompt questions. Conversation leads to questions. If we're really interested, there'll be something in the conversation that perks a thought, perks and prompts questions, which leads to more conversation. And that's what ladies want. Conversation will give opportunities to inform, investigate, gain insight into the heart of your spouse. So that's the two top things, and we'll quickly get into the top thing of men. Again, this is a wide swath of people that have been polled. This is it's regular intimacy. Top, hands down, almost without any competition. That's what's stated over and over. Hebrews chapter 13, verse number 4, the Bible says marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. God gives a note concerning what is a top priority for men, but then he gives a statement of warning to fulfillment outside of marriage is destructive. Our lifetime, in our lifetime, we've been under the influence of the constant drumbeat of equality. Especially, anything from 1960 on, that has been the overriding message, equality. Okay, you realize before World War I, only 8% of married ladies worked. 8% across the whole country. World War II, and out of necessity, I'm not saying it was wrong. It filled a very vital need, because the bulk of men, if they were physically capable, they were enlisted and they were sent to war. But it rose to 30%. 30% of all ladies in the country, married ladies, began to work. And granted, much of that was out of necessity. But after World War II, it did not switch back around. It continued going forward, and statistically, it's in the neighborhood of 75% of all married ladies work some kind of job today. Might be at home, but they are a source of income. You take that, coupled with the bombardment of continually the equality aspect, we begin to see how my job, my money, my car, my this has come about. And as God's people, we've got to recognize it's not it's ours. It's ours. Whoever makes the income, it's ours. But it's difficult when you've been taught all your life by society, and society's voice is huge, that no, it's yours. So you deserve to be able to save some just for whatever you want, and throw some in the kitty for the whole thing. And you can see it's the tool that has been used to divide. Also, in the equality setting, who's the enemy of this equality? The husband. The husband is. What do you mean it's not my money? and granted, you've got to give some understanding to their thought there, because oftentimes men, when they were the sole breadwinner, they said, hey, I make the money, I can spend the money the way I want. And that was never right, but that's what the thought of many men was. They could go out and buy $300 rifle without even giving a thought to the wife. I make the money here, honey. I'll give you an allowance. That's how things were run. And so the minute they start making money, it stands to reason. Well, okay, he can blow some money here and there. I'll blow some money here and there because I am making it. So the husband becomes the enemy of the equality. Equality says you're your own. Don't let your husband tell you what you can and can't do with your money. Also, in the equality, intimacy is for reproduction only. And it's surprising how many people, that's their look at it in today's world. When husband and wives basically live separate lives, yeah, they come together, they do things together, etc. Even, let's say, it's a good functioning relationship, they still are independent. And therefore, I control what I want to do and not do. And it's just tough luck for you if you want something different. Also, intimacy is used often in today's world for a play for power. Meaning, okay, if you do this, the phrase, you might be lucky tonight. If you, it's a play for power. It's okay, I'll give you what you want, but I'm getting what I want, and it's not anybody, either one is not doing it out of a love for the other. It becomes destructive. We find that in today's world, Satan has done a good job in destroying marriages because he's made meeting the needs of the other something that is a bargaining chip rather than because I love you. And we find even among God's people, it's all oftentimes all turned around. We got to say, God, you got to help me, because we grew up in a world that teaches me all the time, every avenue of input by the world is twisted from God's word. And we got to say, God, I've got to search out what you say, and then I need your help in applying it, that my marriage won't be just manageable. Because society settles for manageable, and sadly many times God's people do too. God said, man, I got way more than that for you. We'll pick it up there next week as we look at the second. What do you think that we know what the second top desire of the husband for the wife? Okay, that's a couple more down the line, but it's in the top 5. A recreational companion. Oftentimes, when we dated, began to enjoy each other. Why? Because our common interest. Now, doesn't mean that, you're going to be out on the tennis court when you're 90. Because, boy, she used, when she was 30, she loved tennis. And so, okay, I would drag my carcass out there and see if I can prop myself up long enough to hit the ball back and forth. No, recreation evolves, but there's there's recreation is simply going on walks together. It's just time doing something that's enjoyable, watching a sunset. But guys simply desire, and we'll expand on that next week. All right, Rick.
Let's stand again and sing 458. 458. We'll stand and sing Draw Me Nearer. I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith, and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, near, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, nearer, near, blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. On the last. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross a narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, near, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, nearer, near, blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.
All right. Anybody need a prayer sheet? All right. Well, as we look at the prayer sheet, as always, want to be praying for our church family, workers of the church, just the folks that are part of Faith Baptist Church. Be praying for one another. Our college students, and as they finishing out their summer over the next month, expecting moms, things would continue to go well for them as well as the babies. Military overseas, each of our missionaries on their fields, and right now for the Hazel Schwartz on furlough, for those with cancer, that the Lord would just again give wisdom and help in each of the needs that their particular cancer presents. Then went up and saw Don Smith last Friday. The surgery went well with his hand. They did one hand. He's going when the one hand gets back, he was able to move it about this much. The right hand is what they did. Left hand, it was like a mannequin's hand. He could basically move his arm, not much wrist movement and no finger movement. He could, or Kathy could force the movement, but he could not voluntarily do it. I never, you think about carpal tunnel syndrome, oftentimes keyboard people, but it's also the palm of the hand, and this is the doctor's take to Don, is not made to bear the bulk of our weight. People that are on crutches, for years,